welcome on board. I'm actually the organizer for the meetup, little meetup groups that I have. We have people online watching, you guys here watching. I'm one of the co-owners of Business Building Academy, and tonight we're going to have a presentation with Flynn, and she's going to take over right now. Please give her a hand.
So good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Hi.
My name is flynnnogueira, and I tell people I don't care what you call me as long as it's not Noriega, because that it's not. If it were, I'd be in Panama somewhere, I think. So we're going to talk about be who you are and be successful, okay? And the way I love to do this is, it just works better for all of us if you ask me questions as we go along, okay? Because you all have a lot of expertise and information, and every question is a great question, and it always makes me think about other things I could talk about, but you know, I forget because I have so much going on in my head all the time about where you are and what we need to do next. So your questions are like a great way to make it better for all of us. Does that work? So as you have questions, will you ask? Yes? How many of you are die-hard entrepreneurs? Couldn't work for somebody if they paid you? Yes! How many of you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? Good. So we will not scare you away tonight, right? How many of you have been entrepreneurs for 5 years? 10, 15, 20? Good. How about 20? Maybe a little longer? You know, I always say, so Del Fuego, let me just say a little bit about Del Fuego, okay? Del Fuego is two people, myself and my partner Sarah. Del Fuego, you know what Del Fuego means?
Fire.
Fire. So we are, in addition to being pyros, we are also all about lighting the fire for you and your business. Okay? People say to us, we work with entrepreneurs, which is really what we love to do. And we have a corporate side to our business, too. So when we go and work with large corporations, people say, you're really small. You know, because we compete with 8 companies. You're really small. We are really small. I mean, you are really small. Yes, we are really small. And Sarah and I say that Del Fuego has just got to work because now we're too old for anyone to hire us. So this has to work. So what I want to do is visit with you about how can we be who we are and be successful. This topic is so important to us that we have developed actually a whole system and product around it that Sarah and I have done. What I want to visit with you about is 4 things. I want to look at how do you know if you're a good match for your business? What happens if you're not? What's the difference between subjective judgment and objective measurement? What are the 3 questions any entrepreneur really should ask, especially when you're just beginning to assess a business opportunity, and really as a good sort of refresher when you're into your business? And then what are some actual traits or attributes that Del Fuego has seen in successful entrepreneurs? Does that work for you? And if there's something else, you know, that you really want me to talk about, if there's any way I can talk about it, I will. Okay, if I can't, I'll just say, I have no idea. But if there are other things that you'd like me to mention that have to do with that, I'm happy to do that. When Sarah, this is a little background now about how we get into this. When Sarah and I started Del Fuego about 7 years ago, one of our commitments, because we're both diehard 10 years and realized that I was much better as an entrepreneur. When we started Del Fuego, one of the commitments that we had was really to figure out how to help entrepreneurs be successful with who they were. Because so many times what happens is we get into a business and all of a sudden we realize we're not a good fit or a good match. So as I ask you a question, I just want you to think about it. So the first question I have is, are you a good match now for your business? And if you're not a good match, what can you do about it? What does it feel like when we're not a good match? This is your turn now. What does it feel like when you're lost? Lost. Who said that's great? Lost. What else? Ineffective. Frustrated.
They don't want to go to work anymore.
It's like having to psych yourself up to go, right? As opposed to, I can't wait to get there, right? And we've all been there, right? Whether it's the business we're in now or a job we had at some point, it's like wearing clothes that are too tight or too big, they don't fit, and we don't want anyone to see us. You know, it's like we don't want to be seen. Subjective judgment. So what we have done is say, let's put a little bit of objective measurement in there. Let's figure out a way to really measure who you are that's totally objective, okay? So you can get almost like a new perspective on who you are. So what we did was pretty creative, I thought. We took the online assessment tool that we use in our corporate trainings when we work with corporations for hiring and coaching, and we actually customized it for entrepreneurs. And we work with many entrepreneurs. We work with entrepreneurs all over the world. We work with many entrepreneurs to identify what is an entrepreneurial benchmark. So what are the traits that successful entrepreneurs have? And why do they have those traits? And what is it about those traits that's really important? Okay? And then after that, what we did was we built an audio CD. I brought one tonight that we're going to raffle. If you guys are into that, and get your business card. Because one of the things we do in all of our trainings and with all of our products is we build audio CDs around them for several reasons. One, we call them car cuff CDs, right? Because for many of us, the only time we have to learn is in our car. Maybe we don't spend as much time in our car now with gas. But your learning can be self-paced, and do you know that we retain information about 37% more when you hear it than when you read it? It's almost like you can put the CD on and go to sleep and you'll get something, okay? And we want you to have reinforcement. Because you know how sometimes you hear things, you'll hear something one time, and then you'll go back and listen to it again, a song, and it's like, God, I never heard that the first time. So we build it for ongoing reinforcement. So what I'm going to talk to you about tonight on those 4 areas we talked about is based on what we've learned in working with entrepreneurs with this assessment tool and the benchmark, and really a little bit about the experience from that. Okay? You want to ask me anything yet? We're doing all right? So here are 3 questions I think it's great for all entrepreneurs to ask, especially if you are thinking you're not a good match for the business you're in, if you're looking at a new business opportunity, maybe expanding the business you're in, or if you're really just thinking, should I even be on my own? You know, so many people we talk to, you know what the success rate is of entrepreneurs, people starting their own business?
10%.
3 out of 10 make it. That's not very high. 3 to 4, okay? 6 to 7 out of 10 don't. And that statistic has been pretty constant for a while. Why do you think that is?
They give up too soon.
They give up too soon. Some people would say it's money. But I think it's much more than just money. I think it has a lot to do with who we are, right, and what's inside of us that makes us a good match for that business. 3 questions. Can I do the business? Which is all about how do I learn? How do I adapt? How well will I do the business? Which is all about my behaviors and how I behave in the business. And third, will I do it? Am I even interested in doing it? Okay? So now I kind of want to pick those apart, look at them with you. Number 1, can I do the business? Number 2, how well will I do it? And number 3, will I do it? Will I get up every morning with fluttering anticipation in my heart that I can't wait to get there? Or am I dreading it and I have to psych myself from the time I get up to getting into the car to getting to the office? Big difference. I want to say one more thing that I didn't say. You probably all know people, and maybe you are one of them, who luck into something, right? They just are really lucky and they land it, right? And you know them. You know who they are. Really happy. It drives them, fuels them. I think with objective measurement, we could all be that way. I think it's just moving away from being subjective and judging to just new information. Just new information. Pretty simple. So can I do the job? The assessment we use is called the Profile XT, and it's developed by a company, believe it or not, out of Waco, Texas. Amazing. Private company, been around almost 20 years. And it is one of the most rock-solid assessment tools Sarah has ever used. It measures job performance in 3 areas, those 3 questions. So the first one is all about how do I process information. So as I talk about this now, I want you to be thinking with me and think about you, okay? And how you process in your business. Processing information is really important, and it's only research, like in the last 10 years, has shown that how someone processes information and how that matches to how well you do in your business can make up to 25% difference in your productivity. That's a lot. It's a quarter, right? A whole lot. How you process has nothing to do with intelligence. It's all about how you learn and adapt, and just the amount of information that you can handle at a time. And I want to give you a way to think about that. If you imagine I have 2 containers here, okay? One has a really big opening, one has a small opening. They both hold exactly the same amount. Okay? So if I have a pitcher of water and I pour it really fast, when I pour it into the container with the wide opening, pour as fast as I want, it's not going to spill out, it's all going to just go right in. if I try to do that same thing with the container with the small opening, what's going to happen? It's going to spill on the floor, get lost. Okay? So the analogy is people with the wide opening are people who process very quickly. As an entrepreneur, many times you have lots of stuff thrown at you all the time, right? Having to problem solve, having to make decisions, having to do this, having to do that. Chunks coming at you all the time. Having to adapt quickly, having to learn quickly, having to learn the new aspects of whatever the business is. People with that wide opening can do that easily. They love to problem solve. They can take as much as you give them and move on. People with the narrow opening can handle just as much as the big opening, but it has to be in smaller chunks. Okay? Because people with the smaller opening just don't process as quickly. It's nothing to do with intelligence. It's all about how you process information. Okay? So if you think about yourself and just think about, how do you learn something new? Can you pretty much learn it quickly? Is it easy for you to adapt to a new learning situation? Or is it better for you if it's hands-on, if it's a step-by-step, smaller chunks? So when we work with entrepreneurs, for people who have the smaller opening, what we say is, think about your time so that you're doing it in chunks you can handle, because you will be far more productive that way. Okay? Talking too fast? All right? No? This is your turn. Processing too fast? Have you ever met people who did nothing but make trouble in a job? Okay? So those are people with the big opening, right? It's like if you have that big opening, if there are not enough problems for you in a day to solve, you'll find them and make them. You've all known people like that, right? So how we process information is really critical. I say it's the engine that drives the bus, because it sort of sets the tone of how am I going to go about processing what I need to do. Okay? Now, on this assessment, that section looks at verbal skill, verbal reasoning, math, which a lot of people are like, ugh. It looks at about 90% of the communication skills you use in a job. So it's getting to a lot. And what we have found is that people who have the bigger opening can be more successful more easily, because from an entrepreneur's perspective, there's so much you have to do. Okay? So the question is, well, what do I do if I think I have the little opening? There's a lot of things you can do. You can line up with somebody who's got a bigger opening. And you can really think about putting your day into bigger chunks. Okay? So it's smaller chunks, yeah, smaller chunks. So it's not all. You don't think you're having to take it all at one time. Okay? You want to ask me something about that? Scheduling is a great idea. We're going to
Compartmentalize.
yes, compartmentalizing, exactly. With people with that smaller opening, it's like people with the smaller opening. It's like if I want to drive to Amarillo, someone with a wide opening is going to just go flat out as fast as they can. The distance is the same. Someone with the smaller opening is going to take it at a slower pace. Okay? How well we can do the job, which has everything to do about behaviors. And this area is so interesting. On this assessment, we measure 9 behaviors, which really comprise most of the behaviors that we experience on the job. I'm just going to talk about a few. But the reason behaviors are so important is because I think this is one area where when we do operate outside of who we are from a behavioral standpoint, we may be able to do it for a little while, but it doesn't work for the long run. I want to give you an example. This is a great example I heard from one of the people who works at Courthouse International who developed an instrument. Imagine that I had a rubber band, and I'm stretching that rubber band. It's like when I have to do a business, when I'm not a good fit, what happens if I keep stretching that rubber band? What's going to eventually happen? Yeah. And that's what happens to us when we get into a business where the behaviors don't fit who we are. Okay? It's like pulling that rubber band until it snaps. So let's just talk about energy skills. Energy level is all about how you manage time, how you manage tasks, the pace at which you like to do things. People with high energy, you can feel it. It's almost like an impatience. They always want to have something going on, okay? And it's like they always have to have lots of activities happening. People with high energy are people who multitask. They have 2 or 3 things happening at a time, and they have a sense of urgency that you can really feel. For entrepreneurs, having high energy is sometimes a very good thing, because a lot of times when it's really up to you to make it happen, there's a lot of things going on all the time, right? People who are on the lower side of the energy scale are people who bring a certain calmness to the business and are really more task focused. My partner Sarah and I are a great example of opposite ends of this scale. So these scales are from 1 to 10, extent scale. And the other thing that's great about this instrument, so right here, it's been normed against the working adult population. So when you see your score, not only do you see it for you, but you see how it compares to the rest of the working adult population. So 1 is the low side, 10 is the high side. I am a 10. I mean, it's like go, go, go all the time. Sarah is a 2. Now, so when we start projects, I'm like, let's start 10. And she's like, are you kidding? Let's look at 1. Now what's great about this and how we have learned to work together is she is much more task-oriented than I am, and much better at completing tasks than I am. Because as soon as I think there's a result, what do I want to do? Move on to the next. Always let's move on, right? If I didn't know that about Sarah, if I thought, God, she never wants to get anything done, what happens when we're not aware of the objective measurement? What do we do with people? Judge them, right? We judge them. So the judgment would be, gosh, she never wants to get anything done. And that's not it at all. She is working at a different pace. It's sprinter goes really fast, gets there fast. A long-distance runner won't go as fast, but they'll go the distance. One is not better, it's just different. Okay? So, for entrepreneurs who are on that high, so if you're someone who always likes to have lots of things going on all the time, the key for you is, if you don't have someone who's a balance for you, is to just really make sure you finish what you start. Because our tendency is not to do that. Okay? And if you're someone who's on the lower end, right, where lots of things all at once can seem overwhelming, that's what we see happens to a lot of entrepreneurs who are on the lower end. It's just too much. I can't do all this. So just schedule and take things in segments, because you don't have to do it all at once. Okay? Sasha, go ahead.
I've got a question.
Yes.
How do you manage to get along with your partner?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
with
a
you
great-
sprinting and her jogging, there's got to
Walking.
be conflict. Okay. All right, walking. There's got to be conflict there. That she feels she can't keep up, and you feel you've got an anchor.
This is a great question. Thank you. What's so great about an objective measurement tool? Because when that happens, we can say to each other, low energy, this low energy, this high energy, has to get 1,000 things done. It removes the judgment, so we both know exactly what's happening. It answers all these questions that before was subjective judgment. Now it's objective, and you know why. So instead of making it something that makes it difficult, for us, it's become a great leverage to really increase our productivity and our success. Because now we can use this to balance what we do. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
Can I ask, so if you want 10 tasks and somebody else wants 1, do you compromise like, let's say 5, and she has to schedule herself and you have to calm down? So it's a compromise.
And it's a compromise, but I wouldn't, you really can't calm down the high energy person. Okay? That will be like taking a wild animal and telling them that, you know, they can't run anymore. It just doesn't work. Because what's key about these attributes is this is who you are. And the whole point about this is to really recognize it and learn it, right? And learn what it means for you so that you can do something where you can really be who you are. For Sarah and me, my high energy is something that is always moving us forward, okay? Her lower energy is something that is always keeping us on track. So she's the one who's always having us think about this task. We want to start this, but we haven't finished this one. It's really important to finish this one. She's right. Okay? And I know that's because she is more task-focused and more methodical about how she approaches things than I am. Neither one is good or bad. What's important, especially in a business where you have multiple people, is to really know who is who. So you can leverage it and not have it be something that deters or goes against what you're trying to do. Otherwise it goes into that realm of judgment. She doesn't get anything done. You can decide when we're done.
Okay.
How about sociability? Can we talk about that one? That's really important. Sociability is all about really, what it measures is how much you love to interact with people. Now, what would you think? Am I low or high on sociability? High, right? And how do you know that?
Because you're here.
Because I'm here, I showed up. People who are high on the sociability scale are people who really love to interact. Okay? I mean, they're like comfortable. The more people I'm around, the more comfortable I am. It's the whole thing of you never meet a stranger, right? People with high sociability are people who have a hard time working alone. I can't work alone. I mean, I can be in the office a day or two a week, right? But for me to work alone and not talk to anybody, I would go crazy. I just couldn't do it because I have to interact. It's where I get stimulation and motivation. So for me, high sociability builds everything inside of me that makes me want to do different or more. Okay? Sarah. So I think I'm a 9 on sociability. I think Sarah's a 3. Again, using that to really increase our success. So where I'm the one who's always loving to go out, right, and do things, the front person, right, she's the person who can stay back in the office and do the work that has to be done there.
If you didn't have your partner, would you be able to do your business?
Good question.
That's a great question.
Whoever wants
And I'll tell you, here's the honest answer. Before I met Sarah, and I met her at a networking event, and it was love at first sight, by the way, I was doing a business, and it wasn't working. It just wasn't, you know, it was like maybe it was my 5th business, 6th business. It wasn't working at all. And I knew it wasn't working because I needed someone else. It was the first time in my entrepreneur history I'd really done something totally solo, and it wasn't for me. So what I began to do was think about how can I get someone else with me. So I started networking like crazy. And it happened. I got very lucky. Very lucky. But I knew it wasn't working. And you know, I think all of us, my experience in working with entrepreneurs when they take this assessment, and I'm not trying to sell you the assessment, although I am high on enterprising, which we'll talk about in a minute, and I do love to sell, but when people take this tool, it's like you know what they tell us? It's like taking off the blindfolds and really seeing who I am for the first time. And I think deep down inside, we all know these things. And it's like when we get that information, it's almost like a wonderful confirmation of something we've thought, but we just haven't known how to verbalize or how to put in some kind of information form. Does that make sense? But I knew. Because I wasn't being successful. I'm very competitive, and I didn't like that at all. So I decided to change it. Does that answer your question?
So basically, without this woman, you wouldn't be successful.
Well, I think that I am a very successful person and have always been successful. When I hooked up with Sarah, everything worked better. What we do was a much better match for me, and I became more successful and, you know, more fulfilled. Because I think when you find what you love to do, I love standing in front of you and doing this, right? When you find what you really love to do, everything else falls into place. But it's finding that's sometimes the bear, right, to really do. Okay? Let's see, where were we now? Sociability. Low sociability people who don't really like to interact. They're the people who could sit at their computer all day long and never talk to anybody and be really happy. That's my husband. Never had to like come out of the office. You know, those are the people who don't chit chat, who you'd never find at the coffee machine visiting, right? Really uncomfortable when they have to interact a lot. Really uncomfortable if they have to go to a lot of networking events, you know, just not comfortable. It's like, doesn't feel good, okay? Now, where this can get a little tough if you're an entrepreneur and you have to sell, if you're lower on the sociability scale, really uncomfortable if you have to make your living selling, right? Because that means talking to people all the time. So what do? And there are many entrepreneurs who we work with who are on that lower end of the scale. So again, what do? Bring somebody in who's higher, right? Or one thing we suggested that this one person tried and just loved it, and that's how they do it now, is when you have to meet with the customer, do it at a breakfast or lunch, so you're not the only thing going on. So there's something else happening, which kind of takes the pressure off of you. Okay? So to kind of get a sense of this, do you like it? Is that something you're comfortable with? Or would you rather not? How about decisiveness? That's a good scale. How are we doing on time? 8:15. Decisiveness is all about the risk you're willing to take when you make a decision. Okay? People who are high on the decisiveness scale are people who love to decide because they are fine with taking the risk associated with it, whatever the risk. They love to decide because it's just great to decide. Whatever the risk, I'm going to decide. So maybe some high decisiveness people here. People who are on the lower end are people, it's not that they won't decide, and this is where our judgment comes in so many times, it's they want to really think through the situation before they decide. Okay? So in a business, if you have both ends of the spectrum, it becomes a wonderful checkpoint because the high decisiveness person is like, let's go ahead. And the low decisiveness person is like, let's think about this. Let's think about all these risks involved. And it becomes a great balance. Again. Okay? And when you have that many times, and when you are your own show, you have to make decisions, and sometimes you have to make decisions on the spot, right? You have to. So higher on the decisiveness scale is a place successful entrepreneurs are comfortable. Lower decisiveness, however, is never a showstopper. It's just they're going to take more time. And I think this is such an important scale because this is a scale where it's so easy to judge people. If we're high decisive and someone is saying, I want to think about it, our first thought is, never going to decide. What's wrong with him? Never. It'll take forever before he decides anything. And that's not it at all. They simply are thinking through all the risks, all the alternatives, everything that can happen. Okay? So for them, low decisiveness are just not willing to accept the risk that's associated with making quick decisions.
Very different than them not wanting to say no to you.
That's a whole different thing. That's a problem. do with, am I really interested and passionate? Why is this important? Because we all do better at things that we enjoy, right? Common sense. We all do better at things that we enjoy. And we measure 6 scales. I'm going to talk about 3 that we call the entrepreneurial triangle. Enterprising. Enterprising is all about loving to negotiate, loving to present, to put deals together, to be out in front, to sell. It's all about accepting risk and taking risks. Many entrepreneurs, many people get into business for themselves because they think it's going to be so exciting to have the freedom to be their own boss without thinking about all the risks that are involved. And there are a lot of risks involved. And some of us are built to take those risks, and for others of us, it's harder. And I think that taking risks, if that's something that's not comfortable for you, I think that's something that can trigger stress almost quicker than anything. So people who are high on enterprising, I'm very high, are people who love to take risks, be out in front. People who are lower are people who are more cautious. Okay? And doing something for profit, negotiating, isn't really something that turns them on. There are many scales that are so key. This assessment measures 21. I think enterprising is one of the most important because I think it's what gives the entrepreneur that deep drive to continue to move on through, even when things look bleak. The second one that forms the entrepreneurial triangle is creative. And creative is all about finding new ways to take your product to market, to get the word out about your product or service. It's all about how to do it when it's not working, right? How to not lose that drive to keep doing it when you think there's nothing else I can do. High creative is always trying to come up with new ways to do things. So low creative, hard to think about that. Hard to think about a new approach or a new way to take the product to market or a new way to open up a new network. Just harder to do that. Not your behavioral tendency. That's what we're talking about, is your behavioral tendency. And the third one is people service. People service is different from sociability. People service is all about helping people. And think about your doctor. You really want a doctor who's high on people service. Many of them aren't. But when they are, you can really feel it. Right? You can feel it's almost intangible, but it's that thing where people say, gosh, she's just really great with people. Because it's coming from the place of wanting to help and serve. Really wanting to help people. So for entrepreneurs, if your business is associated with really having interaction or selling products to people, having that as an interest where you're high can really make it much easier. So what we're really talking about are how you process information, the behaviors, and the interests that make it easier for you to take that entrepreneurial path. Okay? Now you want to ask me something?
Yeah, when you take those tests, I see that a lot of people, they are not controlled one side or the other. They kind of mingle. They have some characteristics on this side, and then but they are extroverted and both, but they are very organized. So they mix and match.
So this particular tool is not a personality profile, number one. And it's really designed to look at job success and how you perform on the job, which is really different. The other thing that's great about it is the audio debrief that we do. And we do a lot of debriefs with people, you know, on the phone if they want, just to really, but it gives you a way to really think through it, okay? And you get a benchmark so you have something to compare to, okay? Because what we did was we worked with lots of entrepreneurs, took their results and plotted them into this. Good question. Another question? You guys are so quiet. Is it because you're thinking? Is that why? Tired? Low energy?
How do you
Kidding.
Normally high energy, going to 8:30 is going.
so how do you know that Sarah was the right partner in doing the business?
We took the assessment.
You took the assessment,
Oh,
right?
yeah, we took the assessment. It's one of the first things we did when we started working together. We took the assessment.
So what if she was also exactly like you? Would you have chosen her?
Well, I chose her, and she chose me before we ever did it, because we clicked. You know, you have that when you just click with someone? I mean, we clicked.
The point I'm trying to make is, when you're looking for a partner, should you be looking for somebody who's as ambitious, who's in the same side of the spectrum? Should you be looking for somebody who's in the opposite side of the spectrum? Because
That's a great question. I think, from my experience, I think if you have people who are different from you, it can be very powerful. It can be very powerful. So for us, we hooked up on we're both high creative. We both hooked up on creative. I think that's what really drew us. So we decided we were going to work together, something just worked. Once we took the assessment and we really saw from that, remember I said get a new dimension, who we are, we understood how do we take that now and leverage it so we can maximize everything we do together. And there's no more subjective judgment. You can kid about it. It's like, Flynn, are you going to make 20 more decisions in the next 20 minutes? Are you going to think it through? Okay? So it becomes a great way to pull people back from an objective standpoint.
because one of the problems I see in this is decision making, trying to come up with a decision. You would say, hey, let's go with it. Probably your partner would say, hey, let's not go with it. So, let's think it through. How do you know this? Most of the organizations face this problem of decision making, rapid decision making. So to me, when both of you are on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have a conflict everywhere. You will be trying to resolve the conflict every time, right? So
There are other scales that I didn't talk about, okay, that deal with that very piece, because what happens is once you get your whole results on all the scales, you begin to see how these scales work together, okay? And there are key scales for us that work together very well, that allow the opposite ends of the spectrum to work, okay? So on some other scales, if we were very different, it would not be as easy as it is at all, okay? It wouldn't at all. So it's the interplay of the scales together, and it's how those scales work together.
I could see where if you're both rational people,
We are.
okay, that's the first criterion, okay, criterion. And one is risk averse, while the other is accepting risk. that the two of you can get together and using your high creativity, use like a Ben Franklin decision-making tree, and decide in that manner whether or not to do something. That makes sense to me. But if someone is not rational, but entirely emotional, there's no way you can come to agreement.
That's a great point, and there's another scale that measures that. It's called objective judgment, and it's all about how we make decisions. Do we make decisions from our gut, which is a very emotional approach to decisions, or do we make decisions with our head, which we call mental toughness?
Is there such thing as instinct?
Yes, and instinct is on the scale. The lower end is coming from your gut, your instinct. You just kind of feel. You just feel it right here. You just know. Higher end, coming from your head, mental toughness. We are both very high on that scale. So we make decisions based on our head. Okay?
And that way you can reason it out and say, here are the reasons we shouldn't do it, here are the reasons we should, and okay, there's more reasons we should than we shouldn't, so we go with it.
You're
That
saying
makes
making
sense.
decisions with your head is better than your gut?
For entrepreneurs, let me give you an example. Great question. For entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who are low on objective judgment, making decisions from your gut can become a very emotional way to do it. And sometimes what happens is, because there is all that emotion, right? The decision, how you approach it, maybe how you approach it with a customer, can be much more emotional than needs to be. Sometimes, low on that scale, if you're the one out in front, can almost be a red flag.
So describe to me from an entrepreneurial perspective, objective versus subjective.
So, I have a customer who's really unhappy with one of our audio CDs. High objective judgment first. What I do is I'd sit down with them and really ask them if they would talk to me about what wasn't working for them, and really spend some time and find out, because I want to know. Okay? Low objective, I might say, I cannot believe you said that. This is the best CD we've ever done. What's wrong with you? Don't you know? Don't you know? Weren't you listening? Becomes very emotional. Because my decision about it is all coming from my emotions as opposed to my head. And we, it goes back to what I said before about the rubber band. We've coached a lot of entrepreneurs who are low on that scale. And behavior is one of the hardest things to change, right? If ever, change it. And maybe if we do, we can do it for a little while, but eventually it gets uncomfortable. And we go back to how it was before. You guys are good now, warming up. John?
What if you've got, instead of people at the opposite ends of the scale, two people that are at fives? How does that work versus?
One extreme or the other. So we take you through that and explain that. And, it's like you may have a little bit of both. All right, just a little bit of both, not one extreme or the other. So mostly what we really want to do with this is give people new information, just so you have more information about who you are. And what we talk about is what happens if I'm low, what happens if I'm high, what happens if I'm in the middle. Right? Because there is no good or bad result. Because the result is who you are. It's having the information to know what to do with it. That's all.
I've just had a recent experience where I was, I guess you'd say, asked to share I'm a realtor, and I would say I'm on the low energy scale.
side of the scale. And this gal was brand new agent and very high energy, and I thought this would be good for me, this would be good for her, everything, we can both learn. But we also had an evaluation where I have a very high tolerance for financial insecurity, and she had none. She didn't want to listen to she had the most far out phone message, and I tried to tell her that, it was just over the top, trying to imply that she was doing all this business to the point where it made people think, well, she doesn't have time for me. She didn't want my experience, my input, but after 6 weeks, she had no result. She didn't have any, but I thought, man, she's going to be the greatest realtor. She's got this high energy, and she's going for it, So she went and sold houses. She's already quit that.
So that's a great example of someone who may not be a good match for selling.
And I thought she'd be fantastic.
See, it takes more than high energy, right? Can you begin to see it's this whole interplay of these traits and attributes that really begin to give you the information of what am I really going to be good at? What's going to work for me? What is it that's going to be comfortable for me so I put on the right set of clothes and it feels good every day when I go to work? Right, because that's what we want, is to feel good every day when we go to work. 5 minutes? Oh, it's very fast.
Lynn, I have a question. When you take this assessment, so the objective is not to try to change who you are. In other words, some of our characteristics, our personalities do have the weak side of it. So it isn't instructing you, okay, this is how you can develop. No, it's just staying with who you are. And
that's why we call it be who you are and be successful, right? So the whole thing is, what if I need to be, what if successful entrepreneurs are high on the enterprising scale and I'm too? What does that mean? So we have information for you about what you can do. Because sometimes just having the information, objective information, that's what's really key. Objective, not subjective. That's all the difference. We just needed that little piece of information to open a door or a window as to what do I do. So no, in no way we're saying change, but when you have to operate outside of who you are is when it becomes uncomfortable and you can even risk your health. It's pretty heavy, right? I know, joke or something. So if you would think with me, just think for a minute about a really successful entrepreneur that you know, who's really happy, loves what they do. It's not that they're rich, they love what they do. Right? Do you all know somebody like that? Have you pulled that person up in your head? If you haven't really visited with them, I would. And really ask them, what is it that makes you tick? Why are you so happy doing this? Okay? So serious. So you either fear or greed. Fear.
Mania is another option.
Fear is ever present in people who are having to operate outside of who they are. Okay? Anything else? 'Cause I think my work here is almost done. So, did you turn off the tape yet?
No, do you want me to?
S'il vous plaît, por favor. So this CD and assessment is usually $130. Assessment is about $125. CD is $30. What I would love to do for you guys guys showing up and listening is to offer it to you. If you want to do it, this is totally up to you. You don't even have to give me your business card. I can leave mine and you can contact me if you want to. $99. What that would include is the assessment, audio CD, and if you want, I'll talk to you about it as well. Okay?
So the assessment kind of, what is it going to tell you?
What is it going to tell you? It's going to tell you who you are in those three big chunks, and you're going to get two reports. You're going to get a written report that's text. It's called your individual report that gives you feedback on what sociability is for you, what energy is for you, what that means for you in your day-to-day work. And it's also going to give you a graph that shows you how you compare to the entrepreneurial benchmark, which is inside the audio CD, a little insert. So you can look at that and look at your graph and actually do a comparison.
So does it more or less tell you, are you balanced enough to be an entrepreneur, or is it more of what field of
It's
being an
more like here's the big picture of what we've seen from successful entrepreneurs.
and where you know that?
And you get a picture of where you are. And then the audio CD kind of breaks it down a little bit more. So what does that mean if I'm an independent agent? What does that mean if I really want to be totally on my own? Okay? The assessment takes about an hour to do, and the reason it takes so long is because it's measuring so much. It's all online. You don't have to do it all at one setting. I think it's better if you just do it. But you don't have to. You can do it and come back. Okay?
How long is the audio?
I think it's 45, 50 minutes.
And that's the one you talked about that we can listen to over and over?
And listen to it over. In fact, that's what a lot of people do. We've produced, I think we have about 10 audio CDs now. We've just released one called BNI Networking Secrets. We publish audio CDs for BNI. Many of you probably know about BNI. Largest international networking group in the world. And we did a 3 CD series, which is like the first networking curriculum with the founder of BNI, Ivan Meisner. So we took and captured his 25 years of experience and got it onto 3 CDs. So you don't have to be a member of BNI at all. It was really like, how can we get all of that experience and make it available for everybody else? We just released that one. We have a great CD called What Winners Know, which is all about the behaviors that winners have, done by a great coach, Sarah's husband, who's a wonderful coach. And we have another one coming out in a couple of months called You've Got the Referral, Now What? And so you get a great referral. And just getting a great referral means you still have to do a sales call. So this is, how do I do that? Very easy.
This CD assessment sounds like a great tool to hire people.
It is. When you work in corporations, what we do is we go in and we benchmark positions. So when they hire, they can hire to that benchmark. Exactly. Okay, so I am going to go now, or I'm going to say goodbye to you. And thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening and your questions. And I look forward to seeing you again. Okay?
Everybody put their business card or their information in the bowl, so they're giving away the prize.
Oh, yeah.